Jenny Thomas, I do not stand before you as a politician, a diplomat, or even as a leader from another land. I speak to you as a man who has watched, for far too long, as people like your husband Clarence Thomas turn their backs on those who look like them, share their history, and still carry the scars of chains that once bound them. Clarence, I must speak to you plainly. You have worn the robe so long that perhaps you believe it shields you from truth. But no robe, no title, no seat on the highest court can hide the fact that you have abandoned the very people who once saw hope in you. You are not a defender of the oppressed. You stand guard for the powerful. You pass judgment on a nation, yet cannot judge yourself. You speak of the law as though it were sacred, but you twist it to shelter those already living above it. You speak of principles, but your principles shift depending on whose table offers you a seat. You, who know the history of chains, now help to forge new ones. Have you forgotten what it is to be poor, to be overlooked, to feel your worth reduced by the color of your skin? Or has the soft carpet of privilege erased those memories? When a man forgets struggle, he becomes dangerous. Dangerous because he mistakes comfort for merit. Dangerous because he confuses the applause of billionaires with the respect of the people. Dangerous because he locks doors that he once promised to open. Clarence Thomas, history will not spare you. You may sign rulings, pose for photographs, dine with the powerful. But when your name is spoken in the years ahead, it will not be with admiration. It will be spoken as a warning, a reminder of what happens when a man trades his people for a seat at the master's table. And now, Jenny Thomas, I turn to you. Silence in the face of injustice is not neutrality. It is complicity. And your home has been filled with the kind of silence that screams louder than words. Do you understand what that means? It means that when injustice unfolds before your eyes, when you have the power to speak but choose not to, you are not standing aside. You are standing with the oppressor. Silence is never empty. It carries consequences. It carries the weight of those who needed your voice and never heard it. Inside your home, there may be comfort and calm. But beyond those walls, people march, cry, and bleed in the streets for the dignity that should never have been denied them. The calm in your home is not peace. It is the calm of turning away. You may believe silence is harmless, that it is simply refusing to engage. But silence is always a choice. Silence says, I will not risk my comfort for another's freedom. Silence says, their suffering is not worth my voice. I will not disturb my world, even if someone else's world is collapsing. That is not neutrality. That is choosing a side. The side of power. The side of those who profit by keeping others down. And your silence, Jenny Thomas, is not light. It carries weight. It is not the silence of an ordinary stranger without influence. It is the silence of someone seated close to power. Someone who can whisper into the ear of a man on the highest court, in the most powerful nation in the world. That silence is dangerous because it shields injustice instead of confronting it. I have seen this silence before in Africa. Leaders who turned away from the cries of their own people told themselves they were staying above conflict, that they were keeping their hands clean. But history did not see them as clean. History saw them as cowards. History recorded their silence as betrayal. And betrayal, Jenny Thomas, does not always come from action. Sometimes it comes from refusing to act, from staying quiet when a word could change the course of lives, from closing the curtains so you don't have to see what is happening outside. You may tell yourself, it is not my place. It is not my fight. But if not you, then who? If not now, then when? You are married to a man whose decisions shape the lives of millions. Your voice carries to places ordinary voices will never reach. To claim you have no responsibility is to deny the truth. The silence in your home is not born of ignorance. It is the silence of choice. The silence of deciding that the cries of the oppressed are not loud enough to disrupt your dinner table. The silence of looking away from the fact that the very system your husband defends is the same system that has broken countless black lives in America and kept Africa bound in the shadow of exploitation. Silence leaves a mark, Jenny. It stains just as deeply as injustice itself. Years from now, you will not recall the comfort you preserved. You will remember the moments when you could have spoken but chose not to, and those moments will haunt you far longer than any criticism would have if you had chosen to stand. That is why I speak to you now, because your silence is not invisible. It is felt by those who struggle every day, by those who expected more from people in your position, and whether you accept it or not, it will be written into the story of your life. The only question is, what will that story say? That you stood aside while injustice raged, or that you found the courage to break your silence before it was too late? I come from Burkina Faso, a small nation in West Africa, a nation that bows to no one but God, a nation that, despite poverty and the heavy weight of history, has chosen to stand tall. And in that struggle, I have learned something: oppression does not always come with foreign soldiers on our soil. Sometimes it wears a black robe, seated on the highest court of a powerful nation, handing down rulings that wound its own people, and smiling while doing it. Your husband, Clarence Thomas, has worn that robe for decades. Yet where is his voice when black men are gunned down in the streets of America? Where is his outrage when mothers cry over the lifeless bodies of their sons? Not killed in distant wars, but by the cold machinery of injustice in their own neighborhoods. Where is his voice when names of the dead echo through the streets, names shouted in protest, written on cardboard signs, painted on walls, desperate reminders that their lives mattered? Does he hear them, Jenny Thomas? Or has he gone deaf to the cries of his own people? Where is his outrage when the world watches a man beg for breath beneath the knee of an officer? When millions feel the same pain, knowing this is no accident but a pattern, a system? Where is his humanity when it is time to rise and say, "Enough"? I know something about leadership. Leadership is not measured by titles or robes or seats on high courts. Leadership is measured by courage. The courage to stand in uncomfortable places, to confront truths that powerful people want buried. But Clarence Thomas, where is that courage? Where is that fire? When policies are passed that strip away the rights of the poor, where is his protest? When laws chip at the dignity of the powerless, where is his resistance? When rulings make it clear that the rich grow richer while the poor are left behind, where is his voice? I do not hear it. The people do not hear it. What they hear is silence, or worse, rulings that favor those who already have too much. Where is his courage when it comes to speaking truth to the elites who keep their boots pressed on the necks of the oppressed? Elites who welcome him onto their yachts, into their private resorts, into their grand dinners. Do you think they care about the struggles of ordinary black Americans? Do you think they care about Africa, or the generations it has lost to exploitation? No, they care only for their wealth, their influence, and for men like your husband who shield them from the reach of justice. And still, Clarence Thomas smiles with them. He shakes their hands. He accepts their hospitality, their gifts, their praise. But what good is praise from the powerful if it is bought with the suffering of the powerless? What honor is there in being the favored judge of the oppressor? I ask again, where is his courage? Courage is not in rulings that please the powerful. Courage is in standing alone, if necessary, for the truth. Courage is in remembering the struggles of your ancestors and refusing to become the tool of the very forces they fought against. Has he forgotten where he came from? Has he forgotten that he is the descendant of people who were enslaved, chained, sold, and yet still survived a system designed to destroy them? How can a man with that history sit on the highest court of the land and feel no obligation to defend those whose story is his own? And you, Jenny Thomas, do you not see it, or do you choose not to? Does it not trouble you that your husband, a man who could have been a beacon of hope, has instead become a shadow standing in the path of justice? Where is his voice when Africans are stripped of their resources by multinational corporations shielded by Western courts and laws? Where is his solidarity when Africa declares, "We will no longer be slaves to foreign powers"? Where is his empathy when Africa's youth cry out for independence, for dignity, for the right to shape their own future free from chains? Whether economic, political, or legal, Where is his outrage when African leaders who defy exploitation are demonized, sanctioned, overthrown? Does he speak then? Does he rise to say, "We will not allow Africa to be plundered forever"? No, his silence is deafening. And let us not pretend this is about judicial restraint or blind loyalty to law. The law is only as just as the men who interpret it. And when the man interpreting it chooses to turn away from the cries of the oppressed, he is not upholding justice. He is betraying it. He is betraying it. For decades, Clarence Thomas has had the chance to show America and the world that a black man in such a seat of power could be a champion for the voiceless, a defender of the downtrodden. He could have said, "I will not forget where I came from. I will not forget the struggle of my people." But instead, he chose the comfort of the powerful over the truth of the powerless. Do you think history will look kindly on that choice? Do you think the children of tomorrow will read about Clarence Thomas and say, "Here was a man of integrity, a man of courage"? Or will they say, "Here was a man who had everything, his people's story, their pain, the power to change their fate, and squandered it to serve those who needed nothing"? Where is his courage, Ginny Thomas? Where is his heart? Leadership without heart is an empty performance. Power without justice is only tyranny dressed in new robes. And silence in the face of evil, is not silence at all. It is agreement. I am asking you not as a foreign leader, but as a human being, tell your husband that his people are watching. Tell him that Africa is watching. Tell him that history is watching. The silence he thinks protects him will one day be the very thing that condemns him, because a voice that could have lifted millions has been wasted, and wasted voices do not fade away. They echo, they haunt those who had the chance to speak and chose not to. Instead, I see him smiling with billionaires, whining and dining with men who profit from keeping Africa dependent, from keeping Black America silent, from keeping the world unequal. I see him enjoying luxury while the very people whose struggle he should carry in his heart are crushed beneath the systems he defends. And you, Ginny Thomas, you are not just a bystander. Do not imagine history will cast you as a passive figure standing quietly in the shadows. No. You have walked the corridors of power. You have stood in rooms where the fate of nations was weighed. You have shaken hands with those whose influence crosses continents. You have spoken into ears that shape laws, economies, even wars. You are not a spectator in this story. You are a participant with a kind of access that millions will never know. And what have you done with it? You have used it to push agendas that feed the same elites who feast while the rest of the world starves. Do not pretend this is an accident. You know exactly who they are. They are the ones who treat the suffering of the poor as statistics, not as human tragedy. They are the ones who preach freedom and opportunity, while locking the doors to those who need them most. They are the ones who smile and speak of democracy, while funding the machinery that keeps whole nations chained. And you have chosen to stand with them, not reluctantly, not by chance, but deliberately. The very status quo that has buried generations of Black people beneath poverty, injustice, and disenfranchisement. Think about that word, buried. It is not a word of life or growth. It is a word of death, of finality, of something pressed beneath the earth so it cannot rise again. That is what the system you defend has done to millions. Buried their dreams before they could breathe, buried their hopes before they could blossom, buried their potential under mountains of systemic injustice. And what is this status quo you protect? It is a system where wealth is hoarded by a few while whole communities are abandoned. A system where the law shields the powerful and punishes the powerless. A system where a child born poor has a better chance of going to prison than to college. A system where laws are written not to defend the vulnerable, but to protect the property and profits of those who already have too much. Ginny Thomas, you may think your role is simply to support your husband, to advise him, to stand at his side as he makes decisions that shape the lives of millions. But your influence is not invisible. Every conversation, every suggestion, every connection you nurture feeds the machinery of power, And when that machinery crushes the weak, you cannot wash your hands and say, "This was not my doing." Power is not only in the hand that signs the paper, it is in the voice that whispers in the ear of the one holding the pen. You are not powerless. You never have been. But instead of using your reach to lift up the poor, you've used it to secure the rich. Instead of challenging injustice, you've reinforced it. Instead of standing with the oppressed, you've stood with the oppressor. And to stand with the oppressor is to share their guilt. It is to inherit their shame. When history looks back on this moment, your name will not be among those who fought for freedom, but among those who built the walls that kept people in chains. You may tell yourself you are working for stability, for order, for the good of the country. But whose stability? Whose order? Whose good? There is nothing stable about a nation where some feast while others cannot afford bread. There is nothing orderly about a system where justice depends on the color of your skin or the size of your bank account. There is nothing good about a country that lectures the world on human rights while turning its back on its own citizens crying out for equality. You have been close enough to power to see its hypocrisy with your own eyes. You have heard the way the elites speak one language in public, unity, fairness, democracy, and another behind closed doors. Control, dominance, profit. You have been close enough to power to know the truth. This system will not change itself. It must be challenged, shaken, confronted. Yet you have not challenged it. You have defended it. You have helped it endure when it should have been dismantled. Do you not see the irony? You and your husband, both born from communities that know what it is to be pushed aside, now serve as guardians of a system that pushes others aside. You have become what you should have fought against. And still, you have a choice. You could leave the corridors of the powerful and stand with the powerless. You could turn your connections into demands for change instead of shields against it. You could be remembered as someone who chose justice over privilege, but that choice is slipping away. Every day you spend defending the status quo, you sink deeper into its legacy. And make no mistake, that legacy will be written, not in praise, but in condemnation. There is a day coming when the voices of the poor will outshout the wealth of the rich. A day when Africa rises from exploitation, when Black America rises from systemic oppression, when the oppressed of the world rise together to demand justice. And on that day, those who stood with oppressors will find no refuge in their titles, their fortunes, or their connections. This is not a threat. It is a warning. Your influence could be used for good, but you are wasting it in service of a system that will collapse. And when it does, you will wish you had chosen the side of the people. Power fades, wealth fades, connections fade, but the record of what you stood for will remain. And right now, that record shows you aligned with those who chain the world. You are not just a bystander, Ginny Thomas. You are a builder of the system. The only question is this: will you keep building walls of oppression, or will you begin tearing them down before it is too late? Let me tell you what others may not have told you directly. You and your husband are living a lie. You drape yourselves in the language of freedom and patriotism while ignoring the cries of the oppressed. You claim to uphold justice, yet stay silent when justice is denied to those who share your skin, your history, your struggle. Clarence Thomas, a man who rose from humble beginnings, who should have been the loudest defender of the downtrodden, has instead chosen to serve power in silence. And you, Ginny Thomas, stand beside him, content in that silence, but comfort built on the suffering of others is not safety. It is a trap. Comfort is dangerous. It blinds you. It convinces you that what you have is earned, when in truth it is built on the backs of those who will never be given the same chance. Do you believe history will remember your comfort with kindness? Do you think it will forgive your silence while injustice thrived? It will not. History is a hard judge, and when the dust of this age settles, your names will not be remembered for wealth or status, but for betrayal. Betrayal of a people, of a shared struggle, of the moral duty to use power to lift others instead of pressing them down. You may tell yourself, Africa is not our responsibility, but justice is, truth is, human dignity is. And when you witness injustice, whether in Washington's streets or in a village in Burkina Faso, and do nothing, you are standing with the oppressor. I am not here to flatter you, or to speak gently so you can rest easy tonight. I am here to say what you do not want to hear. You owe a debt, a moral debt. And every day you and your husband remain silent, that debt grows heavier. Do you understand its weight? Africans are watching. They see America's courts, its leaders, its policies, and they see a black man on the highest bench, a man who will not speak for them. Do you know how that feels? It feels like betrayal. It feels like the very people who should break the chains have chosen instead to polish them. You may argue your husband follows the law, that he is neutral, but the law is only as just as the men who interpret it, and neutrality in the face of injustice is not neutrality. It is taking the side of power. So I ask you, Ginny Thomas, I urge you use your influence not to shield the powerful, but to defend the powerless. Use your voice not in whispers to billionaires, but in defense of those whose voices are drowned out. Do not think the elite will protect you forever. The moment you are no longer useful, they will discard you. But the people you turned your back on, they will remember, and they will not forgive. Clarence Thomas is already seen by many as a man who betrayed his own struggle. But you still have time. You still have a choice. Do not waste it. Do not squander the chance to be on the right side of history. Because the tide is turning. Across Africa, leaders are rising who will no longer bow to the West, who will no longer accept crumbs from the tables of the powerful. They are rejecting dependency. They are rejecting exploitation. And when Africa rises, and it will, the world will change. When that day comes, do not let your name be counted among those who stood in the way. Do not let your legacy be that of someone who defended chains instead of breaking them. I do not care for your titles, your wealth, your connections. I care for justice. I care for dignity. I care for truth. And so I speak these words, welcome or not, history is not written by the comfortable. It is written by the courageous. And you and your husband still have the chance, though that window is closing fast, to choose courage over comfort. Choose it before it is too late.